What options do the Maple Leafs have for their course moving forward? We dissect the different paths for the Maple Leafs in the future and link them to a top free agent. You're listening to the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.
You're Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome into the Locked On Leafs podcast, a daily Maple Leaf-centric podcast hosted by myself, Mike DiStefano, and my co-host, Dave Morassutti. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. What's happening, Dave? How we feeling on a Thursday?
Feeling pretty good. I know that a lot of Oilers fans are probably very upset right now hearing about Zach Hyman.
Yeah.
Not great. Not great news for him.
Yeah, Zach Hyman, if you missed the news, breaking news today, he'll be out for the remainder of the playoffs. And, Leafs Nation will always have a soft spot for Zach Hyman. So seeing him, put up, play a strong role for the Edmonton Oilers, right? An opportunity to end Canada's cup drought. It's disappointing to see that he will no longer be able to do that, right? He's going to be up in the press box watching Edmonton as they try and break that run. We'll get into that a little bit more later in the show. But I think for today, when it comes to the Maple Leafs, like we've kind of spent the last week looking back on the season, and yesterday we discussed if we thought the year was a failure or a step in the right direction. And really, I don't think we can really get to a definitive answer until we see how this season plays out. But we both saw both sides of it, I guess. You can go back and listen to the podcast yesterday if you're curious to hear our thoughts on that. But today, we're going to look forward a little bit. And are you familiar with the poem, The Road Not Taken, by the way? You familiar with this poem, Dave?
Taking the road less traveled?
Taking the road less traveled, right? Two roads diverge in a yellow wood. That's the one where, that's where the Leafs find themselves, right? Which road are they going to travel down? Because there are a few paths, I think, that the Maple Leafs have. A few different roads, not just two. There are a few different roads. And for today's show, I want to go through each and every one of them and basically play a percentage game, Dave, where you and I pretty much need to decide, okay, what are the odds that this is the road that the Leafs go down? So for me, there's four different roads. There's four different options, four different paths that the Maple Leafs can take this offseason. Are you ready to hear them, Dave?
All right, let's go. Let's do it.
All right. Road number one, they could run it back, right? Just like they've done time and time and time again. They could run it back. They could sign Mitch Marner. They could sign John Tavares, keep Matthews, keep Nylander, keep Riley, keep the whole pack together and run it back one more time and see what happens, right? That's one option that the Leafs could do. Another option, you could let Mitch Marner walk. You could let John Tavares walk. You could let them both walk. That is another option or multiple options that the Maple Leafs have with their unrestricted free agents. And then there are two other options that have not really been discussed all that much that are worth exploring and talking about, at least on this forum, on this platform. Because what else are we going to do on the Locked On Leafs podcast and talk about some crazy, wacky theories on how to improve this team? But one other option is to trade either William Nylander, and you can even technically trade Auston Matthews to change up the mix and change up the core. Not options I would choose. Let me make that perfectly clear. These are not suggestions for me, but they are technically options the Maple Leafs have in order to change up the group and change up the mix moving forward. Now, we're going to go through these options one by one today, Dave, and kind of discuss the likelihood of the likelihood of each option happening, right? So let's start with the first one, right? Running it back, okay? Is there merit to running it back here, Dave? Is there any argument you could possibly make to running it back for a 10th consecutive season?
Not exactly as it's constructed, no. Because it's not going to get cheaper. Because, yes, you're going to be paying John Tavares less, as has been said multiple times. But you're also going to pay Mitch Marner more based on what we've heard is likely going to happen. And
what's the number you're hearing? Just so that the people know what we're referring to.
I mean, at one point, people were hearing 13, right? Like 13 was kind of the
I've
number.
heard it as high as 14, but yeah.
I did hear 14, but I think that was kind of that felt like before the Rantanen playoff performance, where it's like, okay, maybe 14 is a little far-fetched considering. So like it's the matter of you're paying a third guy over $10 million. You got Matthew Nice, who I don't know if you've been hearing, he's apparently going to cost this team $7.5 to $8 million. So what you're saving from Tavares, Nyes, Marner, if you were to do the whole, run it back, the numbers just don't really add up exactly how I feel it should do, especially considering there are other areas the team needs to address.
So you think that there's a 0% chance? Not that they should, but do you think there's a chance that they could? Like, what are the odds if you had to lay it down, right? Like, let's think of this as a pie, okay? Think of it as a pie, and we have to allot 100% of the pie to these four options, right? Running it back, the decision with the UFAs, trading Willie, or trading Matthews, right? That's the way we see change. Running it back in a percentage form with a pie, like what percentage would you put on it?
20%. Like that's being maybe
that's
even being
actually
generous.
Kind of higher than I thought, to be
like
honest.
15 to 20% just to be generous, because Craig Berube and Brad Triving are just like, well, we like Mitch Marner. We want to keep Mitch Marner. Like,
he's a good player.
Yeah.
He's a great player. Just hasn't gotten it done in the playoffs. And it's just like, well, when is he going to? Like, if he hasn't already, when is he going to?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Whereas Willie has had those moments in the postseason. Austin has had those moments in the postseason. And regardless, it's the easiest path, right? When we talk about the road less taken, right? That would not be letting Marner or Tavares walk. The road less taken would be the trade route, right? That would be the hard way of making change. The easy way is to let one of these guys walk. Running it back would be somewhere in the middle, I suppose. That might be one of the harder. That might be the hardest way, actually, is just completely, forgetting everything that everyone has said and just tripling, quadrupling down. But with Brendan Shanahan out of the mix, I don't see that being really part of the equation, which is why I have it at a lower percentage of the pie. I have it at like 5%. I think there's a 5% chance they run it back with the core four one last time. I think there is a small chance, but not a very large one. I'm putting it at 5% myself. The other option is obviously the Maple Leafs have a big decision to make with their pending UFAs with Mitch Marner and John Tavares. Let's take a quick break. We'll come back and we'll talk about that option and the likelihood of one, both, or neither staying around in Toronto. We'll do that next here in the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NHL playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easier to stay in the game before tip-off and live. With player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, fans have more ways than ever to get in on the action, win big, and play smart. Which players are showing up in the biggest moments? How can you track their trends to help build your next parlay? What would it look like to combine live prop bets in a mid-game based on how the action unfolds? You can find out over on FanDuel. New to FanDuel, it's a perfect time to go there and sign up. You can head to FanDuel.com, place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. The Panthers, they could possibly win it. Edmonton, are they ready to end it all tonight? You can place a $5 wager on their money line win, and potentially they win. You'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the Locked On Network. The Locked On podcast, Locked On Leafs podcast continues. Mike DiStefano, Dave Morassutti with you as we are each and every day here on the Locked On Leafs podcast. Once again, thank you to our everydayers who are subscribed and take in the podcast each and every day. And just a reminder to those just popping in, we are a daily Maple Leaf centric podcast, which will be going all off season long. So just because the season's over for the Maple Leafs, it's not over for Dave and I here on the Locked On Leafs podcast, which is free and available wherever you can find your podcasts. You can also find it on YouTube as well. Hit subscribe and get your daily dosage of Maple Leafs content from the two of us. And today's discussion, we're talking about the different paths that the Maple Leafs have ahead of them this offseason. We believe they need change, right? But how much change? What options are available to create that change? We discussed the one option of running it back, which obviously does not create change, and we don't think that that is a likely scenario, but it is an option that the Maple Leafs have. The next option, and this will really dictate, I suppose, how the rest of the offseason goes, but their options of whether or not they keep or let walk of both Mitch Marner and or John Tavares. When we attack this path, Dave, where do you want to start here? I guess we should probably start with Mitch Marner because that is the number one topic of discussion when it comes to Leafs Nation. The odds that Mitch Marner re-signs here in Toronto, Dave, stand at what to you at this current moment?
5%, I think.
So you're giving it a 95% chance that the Maple Leafs let Mitch Marner or John Tavares walk.
More so Mitch Marner. Like if we're just saying Marner, I give that a 5% that he comes back. It just feels like it's heading in that direction. If unless something changes out of nowhere, I don't see that. I don't see Marner all of a sudden now deciding he wants to stay when he's had a pretty long time to figure out if he does want to stay. I think the Leafs also just realize it's not enough it's just not enough. I need to get more done in the playoffs, and he's one of those guys that just hasn't been able to get the job done. So yeah, I just think it's best for both sides. Just, you know what? As much as it hurts to let a guy like him leave for nothing, I truly understand that. There are ways to make it sting less.
Okay.
And one of them is bringing John Tavares back, because one thing Marner isn't that Tavares is he's a center. Mm-hmm. It's much harder to replace a center when you look at this current free agent class. And yes, there's no other 100-point player on this free agent class. I truly get that. But there's other elements that I think Tavares brings that Marner, good on the faceoffs. I think he's still a good leader in the room. I think that veteran presence needed. He scores more. I know he doesn't
around the net, right?
Go to the net, plays that style that you need in the playoffs. He had 38 goals. Mm-hmm. He didn't luck into 38 goals. I'll tell you that. He was one of the better Leaf players. If you look even at the metrics, he was one of the better Leaf players at scoring in front of the net. That is John Tavares' game.
If I'm not mistaken, I'm going to look this up as we talk, but I do believe he was among the league leaders in terms of high danger shots on net, which, I believe is a really good statistic that could lead to goal scoring. Most of the players who are high up on that list score a lot of goals. And I'm pretty sure, if I'm not mistaken, Tavares, I'm just quickly looking that up right now, was among the leaders. Yeah, he was fifth in the league with 104 high danger shots this season. So, he gets to those greasy, dirty areas that really result in goals. And you look at all of his goals, they're pretty much from that spot. He's not one that's taking clappers from the top of the circle, right? He's always scoring in tight, in around the net, deflections, rebounds, right? Working hard, taking the puck to the goal, greasy garbage goals, maybe a little wraparound action. That's where he scores, in tight, in and around in the net area. That's what succeeds in the playoffs. He did have 5 goals in the playoffs, which was second on the Leafs, behind William Nylander and I believe tied with Matthew Nyes, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, I'm with you. If I had to put an odds on it, I think it's more likely we see Marner walk and Tavares get re-signed. But my question to you, Dave, is do you see a world where the Leafs come back and it's Mitch Marner resigns, but Tavares does not, where the Leafs come back to next season with Matthews, Marner, and Nylander as the core three, and they no longer have John Tavares there for the ride. Do you see that being an option at all?
I don't, just because Tavares has been kind of open this entire time that he wants to be back. He even said that, talking with your living about coming back. So like I think that
I get it. He's open to coming back, but for the sake of needing to mix it up, right? If you make the decision, we don't want to let Marner go, but we want to mix it up. Letting Tavares walk is an option. That's where we're talking about different paths. That is a path, and that is an option. Tavares might want to come back, but if you can use that $5 million elsewhere, right? Because you got to pay Marner, you got to pay Nyes, you got to you got to pay some guys here. You let him walk, and then you bring in something else just to give it a bit of a different mix. Do you see that being an option?
I don't. Personally, I don't. But again, stranger things have happened. Let's just say.
Yes, absolutely. I think the fact that we're still here with the core four at this point is strange. So I suppose stranger things have happened and probably will continue to happen as well. But if I got to put a percentage on it of them, if the path that they choose is to let Marner and or Tavares walk, like one of those two walk or both, like I'm pretty high on it. I think it's 87% odds that one or neither of those two are going to be on the team next year. I think it's pretty likely that that is the path that is chosen. Just simply because they got to change up the mix. And again, you probably don't fire Brendan Shanahan if you were happy with the core four, right? Yeah. If you're happy with the results of what the core four yielded, you probably continue on with Shanny as the president. Clearly, his dedication to that group and their failures over the years is what led to his demise. I would be shocked if we see, the new president. I keep wanting to call him Richard Petty, but he was the old president, Keith Pelly.
It's very similar. I've almost done that one.
Right? Pelly, Petty. Anyway, I would be very floored if Pelly decided to double down on this core four the way that Shanny did time and time again. I think change is needed, change is required, and letting one of those two or possibly both of them walk is the easiest way to get and make that change. And that's the most likeliest path, I believe, and that's why I have it at 87%. So that's it to me. But you mentioned crazier things have happened. There's a couple other crazy options that are on the table, yet not very likely through the trade market that could invoke change here in Toronto. Let's quickly touch on those options and give a likelihood of that happening. That's next here in the Locked On Leafs podcast. Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. Mike DiStefano, Dave Morassutti with you. The Maple Leafs have themselves some tough decisions to make this summer, and they're at a major crossroads. And, we kind of were talking about the road not taken and how two roads diverge into a yellow wood. And that's kind of where Brad Treliving and Keith Pelly, there we go, got it, Keith Pelly are there. They find themselves and they've got to take one of these roads. And which one are they going to take? Will they take one of the less traveled roads, one of the hard roads to take? And that to me would be, instead of deciding to let Marner and Tavares walk to make change, you make the even harder decision. Maybe you make a trade of one of the guys who are currently under contract so you can maximize the asset instead of letting Marner walk for nothing. Marner, a player who plays 200 feet on the ice, same with Tavares, who are incredibly productive and very valuable. Maybe you make a trade, and the two big guys obviously we're referring to in order to change up the core four, you would have to consider either William Nylander or maybe even Auston Matthews. Again, I don't condone that option, but it is one that the Maple Leafs could have at their disposal, and I'm sure would be able to get an absolute haul. And it's one that I have seen floated out there. Like, this isn't the first time that I think it's been posted there. Our comment section all the time talks about trading Auston Matthews and how he's not a good enough captain and can't lead this team. And that's the only way for this team to move forward. Again, not something I agree with, but it is definitely an opinion of a portion of Leafs Nation. So let's dive into those two paths really quickly here, Dave. Trading William Nylander probably makes more sense than Matthews. Like both of them, probably very unlikely to happen. Trading Willie, I've got at 5%. Like I think it's very unlikely that they trade William Nylander. But this was brought up on Overdrive the other day. Darren Pang discussed this again, stating it's very unlikely, but did say like, hey, Nylander, moving him would be big change, major change. It's the tough decision, but it's something that I think is worthy of conversation because at least if you trade Willie, you can get something back for him. Whereas if you just let Marner walk, you're getting nothing back. So there's a possibility you keep Marner, you trade Willie for assets, and you probably are better off asset-wise moving forward. So there are merits to that conversation, I think.
I can see the reasoning behind it. Like he's been a part of this core, right?
Before we continue, I also do, of course, want to acknowledge because I know we're going to get roasted for it in the comment section. Yes, Willie has a no trade clause, a no move clause. We are fully aware of that, but we are still having that discussion. Just so it's had. It still
you got to talk about all the options, right?
Right.
And
Marner had a no move clause, and they asked him to waive, and he said no. Maybe it happens, but we at least got to talk about this option.
I think. Look, would Nylander waive the no trade clause, no movement clause? Very, very unlikely. I think he's also one of those people that wants to play in Toronto, and there's a reason. Like he did sign up for 8 years here, so he's made it clear he wants to be here.
Yeah.
Now, would teams also look at that contract and want it too, right? That's the other thing. It's not an easy contract to trade. Like he is a guy who has put up 40 plus goals, pretty much 100 points. So there's value to that, but there are teams that get a little worried when you get into that, $10+ million conversation for a player and whether or not you actually want to do a deal for someone like that.
I heard I don't know why I've never come up with this nickname, and maybe I've just been ignorant and this nickname's been out there, but I was at a card show over the weekend, and obviously these conversations are happening at all the shows. Everyone's asking me, you think Marner's going to walk? What are they going to do this summer? I'm having these conversations with the people all the time when I'm at these card shows, and there was a gentleman standing next to me when I was having the conversation about Marner, and he says, that's not the answer. The answer is to trade one-way Willie. I thought that was have you heard that nickname for Nylander? I don't know why. I feel like I haven't heard it. One way Willie.
No, but it feels like I should have to this point.
Right? Like, I don't know if he made that up on the spot or what. Like, I love alliteration. And One Way Willie is a terrific nickname for Bill Nye, the offense guy, because there's not a whole lot of defense being played a lot when it comes to Nylander. And I think that's ultimately why a lot of people look at trading Willie as an option, because like that's something that at least Marner does give you, is that 200-foot ability. Same with Tavares.
Sure.
Whereas William Nylander doesn't quite do that. And we're watching it unfold in the Stanley Cup playoffs right now in the conference final. The teams who are locked down defensively are the teams that are winning. Like defense wins championships. It's an old saying, but it's a true saying. It really is. It's pretty chalk when it comes to the Stanley Cup playoffs right now. And one of those three, right, between Willie, one of the four, really. We'll throw Matthews in there as well, right? The core four, they are a package deal. There's one player in that mix who definitely lacks defensively over the other three, and that would be William Nylander. So if you're thinking about making change, why shouldn't his name come up as a possibility?
You have to explore it. You can't say no to, like, I understand when teams call and ask if a certain player is available, some guys like they just hang up the phone. William Nylander is not that player that I wouldn't say no to potentially move. It just has to make sense, right? You're not just going to make a move for the sake of making a move, but
but like you get to keep Marner in that case, and you also get at least whatever asset you can out of it.
That is true. I just don't. At the same time, is that the direction you also want to go? Where if you let Nylander go, it's used to keep Marner. You could be also do other things, right? But here's the thing: the Leafs did potentially look at moving Nylander years ago, before they signed the contract. He didn't get much of a bite, right? And now part of it was because he was on an expiring deal. Teams don't want to usually do those sort of.
Yeah,
Add a
he
guy
has
like that.
had 2 40-goal seasons since then, though.
Yeah.
He's coming off a 45-goal year where he was second in the NHL in goals. So I do think that there would be a lot of teams that would be interested in a William Nylander. I really do.
What I'll say is, though, those 45 goals, you got to replace them somewhere. Like, same conversation with Marner, but goal scoring is tough. Yeah. And look, Craig Berube probably could have easily have said, I don't know about this guy. Like, they could have those conversations, but
what do you? Here's my question to you, Dave. Here's my question to you. What do you think is more easy to replace? Right, Willie's 45 goals, or Marner's 100 points and Selke level defending?
That's a tough. Well, okay. I
would argue Marner. Marner would be a harder to replace.
But here's the thing: we say that defensively in the regular season, but in the playoffs, that top line was outplayed against the Panthers, especially in those last 3 games. So, like, the Selke one, to me, I think that goes a little out the window because I don't see it when it matters in the playoffs from Marner.
That's fair.
That's fair. Like, comment. The thing is if Marner has to win the Selke too for me to. I know he's been a finalist. I know he's been close.
Yeah,
but like, he's got to also win the damn thing, right?
Okay.
And so to me, I've had this conversation multiple times with people. If you're moving on from a Marner, what you could do with that money instead, you can make it work, but you got to. Here's the thing: you can make Marner, you can trade Marner, you can trade Nylander, you get the cap space. But here's the thing: you got to use it properly.
Yeah,
like, just because teams have cap space doesn't mean you always use it properly. Look at Detroit and all the free agents they've signed over the years. How many deals they traded away Jake Walman and a first-round pick to San Jose to get rid of that contract, and for some reason to keep Justin Hall.
Yeah.
Jake Walman is now an asset on the Edmonton Oilers.
Boy, top 4 minutes on a cup contending Edmonton Oilers team that's literally one win away from the Stanley Cup. And he's playing a pivotal top 4 role with that club.
So sometimes it's like you got to be very, very careful when you say, okay, trade X, Y, and Z for cap space. Like for Nylander, you just have to decide you're not winning a Nylander trade either. We've seen what's probably the closest comparable. The Tkachuk trade, maybe.
Probably. JT Miller.
Or even the Eichel trade.
Well, yeah.
JT Miller.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's the same thing that the Canucks are dealing with right now with Pettersson.
I'd love to bring JT Miller into the fold.
I
still think that's the type of player that this team needs. The contract and his age worries me a little. And the fact that he's been a bit of I don't know, it's been questionable with him in locker rooms, but that's the type of player, type of fire that I want to inject into this lineup. Maybe he's not the exact guy, but like a replica version of him would be very nice for this Maple Leafs team. Years ago, I was on the Willie for JT train. I was on that train like literally 3-4 years ago when I was on Leafs Lunch. That was my kind of pound the table. I would make that deal, and it never happened. They ended up signing Willie, and we'll see. I don't expect them to make this trade. It is the road less traveled, right? This is the harder path to choose to make this trade.
Mm-hmm.
But it is an option that is on the table that I think is worth exploring. The Matthews one, I only threw it out there because, again, it's something that has been discussed more so online in the comment section, but I think that's absolutely trash take, to be honest. Matthews is not the problem with this team. It's not, like, realistically. People quickly forget that this guy scored 69 goals last year. 69 goals. He's a centerman. He plays 200 feet. Like, yeah, the injuries, clearly when he's not 100%, which is quite often, if we're being completely fair, they don't allow him to be that 69 goal guy every year. But even in a down year, like, he's still going to pot you up 30 to 40 which is a pretty solid season for anyone else in the NHL. So I think it's an absolutely ludicrous take to trade Auston Matthews. I'll put this at 0.01%.
You why? Why would I understand when you're pissed off when team doesn't do well, you're gonna throw everybody under the bus. But
I would love to know why too, because again, it's a conversation that's had in our comment section a lot. So people in the comments, let us know down below. What's the reasoning for why you would trade Auston Matthews? I really want to know. Let us know down below. Go ahead, Dave.
And please don't say just for a change, or don't say because, I've heard people say he's lazy in the playoffs. He was injured. Let's be honest here.
Well, that is the one argument that I think does hold merit. He's spectacular when healthy, but the last few years, the injuries have really crept up here, and that's been a problem.
That's true.
And that's the one thing I guess you could say. It's not quite Eric Lindros level yet, I guess, but it's man, when he's healthy, it's great, but rarely is he healthy at this point. Seems like every year something's bothering him. Something is popping up with this guy.
The big one here for me, though, is there are ways you can make it a lot less. You can lessen the load on Auston Matthews. Starting with, don't play the guy on the penalty kill.
Correct. Yeah, I'm with you on that. Let's find some guys who can kill penalties lower in your lineup, right? Those role players. Let's get those guys killing penalties.
If you let Mitch Marner go, you could get quite a few good penalty killers with that.
Well, he's a big penalty killer too, so you're gonna have to fill his role and then some on top of that. That's another thing for Willie, right? Where it's you let Marner walk. That's now you got to find someone at 5-on-5, pick up those top line minutes. Got to find someone picking up PK minutes and power play minutes. Whereas Willie, you don't have to replace those penalty kill minutes because he doesn't kill much penalties. I know he was out there a little bit this year, but he's not really an effective penalty killer, I would say. But those are the options I think the Maple Leafs have this year, right? They can run it back. They can sign Marner. They can let him walk. They can sign Tavares. They can let him walk. They could sign them both. They could sign neither. Or the road less traveled, they could make a difficult decision to trade William Nylander. Trading Auston, I guess, is an option, but not a very good one, I would think. So those are the paths. Those are the roads that the Maple Leafs, I believe, have this upcoming season. And based on how that works will depend on, I guess, how they go about free agency, the draft, and the rest of the offseason to try and build towards next season.
I forgot I had bookmarked this stat, but back when the Leafs were in the playoffs, Auston Matthews had the most puck battle wins in the playoffs with 67, and the next closest was 55 with Barkov.
There you go.
Tavares was third with 54, by the way.
Yeah.
So
Tavares is always up near the top in puck battle wins. Always.
That's not a lazy player to me either. So just
no.
wanted another way to throw away that narrative too.
Yeah. Grass isn't always greener on the other side. So letting all these guys walk, trading these great players, grass isn't greener on the other side. I will caution that to Leaf fans who are asking for all the change in the world. One of these four players, I do believe, cannot return next year. Which one that is, I guess we'll find out. The most likely player not to return, I think, is Marner. Is that the correct option? I don't know. I guess we will find out. But if they let one of those players go, that will open up quite a bit of cap space tomorrow, Dave. And I swear we'll get to it tomorrow. We will talk about a couple of free agents that are linked to the Maple Leafs. There's one big specific free agent that is linked. And a lot of these free agent boards are starting to come out now from TSN and Sportsnet and The Athletic and DFO. And Mitch Marner is populating at number one on all of them. So we'll kind of take a peek, a quick look ahead to free agency and talk about some of the rumor mill items of who the Maple Leafs could be targeting. So that'll be on tomorrow's show. That'll do it for us here today on the podcast. I'd like to thank you all for listening and supporting the show. You can subscribe to the Locked On Leafs podcast on all platforms and receive daily Leafs content. Follow myself on Twitter at Mickey_Canuck. Follow Dave at D_Morassutti, and follow the show as well at Locked On Leafs. We'll be back with another episode for you guys tomorrow. But until then, keep it locked right here on Locked On Leafs.